I'm George Gonzalez, and today is Multiplayer Monday. I'm obsessed with making games, and I want to talk to you about how to make multiplayer decisions easy for you as a developer. What should you learn? There's so much, especially if you're a Unity game developer, there's so much to pick from, and there's been so many updates and changes that oftentimes paralysis by analysis with multiplayer games, and so you don't know where to start. And so today, I am going to talk to you as if I'm talking to myself 3, 4, 5 years ago, okay, or even when I started game dev, if I wanted to start a multiplayer game, because there's a lot of decisions that I made in my life that have changed the course of where I've been, and I want to share those with you at the same time that I'm sharing these tidbits to my self in the past, if I had a chance to. Okay, so the first thing I prepared this kind of roadmap to questions to ask yourself. Okay, so you just started and you want to learn what should I do as a game developer? I want to make multiplayer games. Where do I start? Okay, my first question is, do you know how to make games? And it's like, well, have you published games or have you participated in game jams? Do you have the skills that you need to make games? That's the first thing. Not multiplayer games, single player games. Have you made single player games before? If the answer is no, then you need to make sure you take the time to learn how to make games, like how to script, for loops, conditional statements, events, just gain skills in game development. And if you're doing Unity, get used to Unity. Unreal, get used to Unreal, and Godot, the same. Any engine, you just want to get used to the engine and being a developer, debugging, all those things before you even start multiplayer game. Because trying to learn those things at the same time you're learning multiplayer games is just recipe for disaster. So that's my first advice. Once you know the skills, okay, and these things are out there on YouTube for free. If you need more hands-on help, I have an Endgames dev community. For all these aspects that I'm going to talk about, I am here if you need help figuring this out along the way, or you need help getting to the next step. So let's say you learned the skills, you're done. Now the question is, do you need physics in your game? Are you doing physical collisions? Like, let's say you're doing a Mario Kart game, but in this game you're pushing each other, kind of like FX0, or you're doing bumper cars or something. Maybe you are the character, physics based, or you're doing simulations, ragdolls and stuff like that, and you need that kind of prediction. Then your choice is Photon Quantum. So why do I say this? So here, Quantum is one of the solutions from Photon, and they have in here one of the options because it's a deterministic model. And if I go in here, Quantum, it'll show you how it views. It does all the simulations on their server, on the Quantum server. So you don't. This is huge wins for physics-based because everything happens on the server. That alleviates your client the build that's either in VR or non-VR, in a mobile device or a PC, to do all the pretty stuff for rendering models and animations. All the actual gameplay and stuff is happening on Quantum server, so you don't have to worry about physics taking over a lot of resources on the device. So really good win. This is something that I wish I had time to learn because I want to. My next thing that I want to learn and dive deep into is Quantum. That is my wish to have more time to learn this. Okay, so that's if you physics, right? If you need physics and deterministic model, Photon Quantum is the way to go. Yeah, it's just clear winner. Now let's go into if you don't need physics. The other question is, do you want to do a competitive game? And this is where it gets tough because the answer I would give you is no. Don't do competitive as your first game. Just like people say, don't do MMOs as your first multiplayer game. I would not do competitive games because you need to understand. You're trying to learn. Your first game is not going to be a success, and even if it is, it's not going to be able to scale. And competitive games need scalability, competitive. Like the important aspects, and they require knowledge. So maybe if your game is successful, you could hire someone that would know how to do it. But that's a big if, right? And so I would definitely wait to do competitives. This is how to make yourself, how to learn. The two things that the advice is based on is, one, you want to learn multiplayer the fastest, and you want to be successful in what you do as a developer. So you want to learn the engine as fast as you can. And so in order to cut scope, you cannot do competitive at the beginning. If you choose to do competitive, you're increasing scope technically on your own, because the whole point of me doing this is to give you an advice. And so you can take it or not, leave it, okay? But my advice would be, don't do competitive if you want to learn fast. And you'll see, because we're going to talk about other things as we go farther into this. Time is valuable. And cutting scope guarantees success. Okay, so if you cut scope, it's a guaranteed success on your time. You're actually going to make more money in the future because you are learning faster than someone that didn't cut scope. Because the only way you're going to learn is two things. Either you work more hours or you cut scope to make things faster. So those are your two options, right? You have two sides of the equations, time right? And how you divide, you either cut down on time or spend more time, right? So if you put double the time, you'll do it in double the speed, right? And then you can also improve on how well your time spent. But that's one of the things. That's why I'm advising don't do competitive, so that you can actually learn how to do things. If you do want competitive, though, let's say you want to focus on prediction and what is widely used. You want to see what's out there that's a finished product that has been used for competitive games. Fusion, it's not. I wouldn't say vastly used by like. There's some well-known games that use it, but not like super active. Most of the games that are competitive, they use their own servers, and obviously they pay big money for eight players. And so it's kind of hard because you have self custom. You probably end up using headless servers, which cost a lot more to run and figure out. So this is focused on indie developers. Okay, for indie developers, again, this is why you don't want to go this route, because it's going to cost you longer to build, longer to test, more to maintain. Yada yada. I've done it. Monkey Doodoo. We went from shared Fusion to Fishnet headless servers, and in the end, it costs the same to run. Like the servers cost the same as if it was on Fusion. But the cost of building and porting over to headless servers took about 8 months, which is longer than what to build the game. It took what it took to build the game almost to change it, and so I would not advise it. So that's why competitive this route I would not take if you're an indie developer. Just like guaranteed overscope if you go that route. Okay, so let's say no competitive. The next question you'd have to ask yourself is, are you good with documentation? Can you sit down and read documentation and understand it without anyone else talking to you? Like, can you implement it, figure it out, maybe grab a template, understand it without anyone explaining to you? If that's you, good for you. Like, I'm really bad with documentation. But let's say that is your route. So what do you do next? Well, do some research, pick 3 candidates. If you're good with documentation, you could probably spot other plugins, assets. So I would go here in Fusion, Photon, and see, okay, like based on this, what are my needs, right? What kind of game am I trying to do? See, like MMOs right here, MOBA, and like it'll tell you different aspects, RTS, defend, 2D, survival. And so you have different topologies. And even with Fusion, you can do headless servers. You can host a server somewhere else. It doesn't have to be a Fusion. They have the options. And Fusion has a lot more samples. And it has a lot of proven benefits and a lot of things right by the get-go that other things don't have. Like Unity Network for Game Objects is a really good start to Unity getting into the space. I think they're a little bit behind, so that's a bummer. It seems like no matter what, Fusion always is a step ahead of most of the competition. They've always been, even though they changed, they actually pivot based on what's going on, so they know what's going on. I'm personally not a big fan of the Photon team, but I like there's certain things I prefer to do better with documentation and other things, but they have a lot more than other things have to offer, other solutions. You have, for example, let me show you. Pernet is something that they have a lot of YouTube videos on it. And the only thing, if you go to what the roadmap is, you'll see that they're working on a lot of these things that Fusion already has all these things. They also have things that might not be in here that you're not aware of, like something that I know Fusion doesn't have for peer-to-peer. They don't have host migration, which is when the host leaves, what happens? Because this in multiplayer games, a lot of people go AFK, they leave the game, and so what's next? And so the problem is that most of the solutions you have to figure out how to do. Every time I ask, they're like, well, you have to figure it out. And so there is no one way. Whereas Fusion already has a setup to do this host migration, and they have it for all their solutions like client host, shared, deterministic. Like and usually with deterministics or dedicated servers, you don't need to because the server's in charge, right? But in client host and shared mode where you have peer-to-peer, you have to figure that out. And I've seen, so for example, let me give you a real world scenario, okay? So when I had to do Monkey Doodoo, I was asked, okay, how long will it take you to build this game, right? Like within 7 days or within a few days, I had a pretty basic prototype where you connect with Fusion shared. And within 7 days, we had a test that we could build out the meta, just to boom, right there, 7 days. And I didn't know anything. Okay, so we could only see hands in VR, and we could jump around. And so even in a minimal like just scenario, like I could get started really fast with Fusion. And so that was like a 40-hour work week, and I got paid for it, obviously, so it was my job. So if you're lucky enough to get paid to learn or to figure this out, it's a really good scenario. But I would think, again, you have to think about what's out there and do some research. You also have the Unity Asset Store. And if you go into the Asset Store, you can do networks, solution, I think something like that. And you'll see like Fishnet, Mirror have been used a lot. ObjectNet is a new one, easier multiplayer system. What you got to understand is that there's hidden work that's not being addressed here, and that is that these solutions are the transport. So it's how to do the code, but where are you going to host the code? How is this going to be implemented? And so what you have to think about is like from installing to then launching in the title. How do I do that? So my advice is to these, as you're doing some research, is focus on the goals, the cost, the bandwidth, host, headless server, and decide how long you'll devote to learning each candidate. I said 10 to 40 hours, probably 40 hours to see how far you can get. And the goal is to get it on the device. So if I'm doing for mobile, it's like, how long does it take me to make a build and figure out how to connect to the same room from 2 mobile devices or from PC to PC? And not like in the editor, not like multi-peer stuff or actual deployed. Okay, so PC, VR, whatever that is like, can we test it? If I give it to my body, my friends and buddies and stuff, can we test it? That is your goal, because oftentimes you hit play, you try to figure out how to test in the editor. That's all fine and dandy, but you need to know how long it takes to deploy it. And if you're doing a headless server and you're doing host, like where are you going to host it? How do you connect? Matchmaking, that makes things more complicated. That's why I said peer-to-peer is the best way to start, and figure that out. Pick 3 candidates and know that you're going to spend probably a week on each, and spend 40 hours, whatever's first, and take the time to be able to scratch that, right? And if you pick 3 candidates you're thinking about, like let's say pick Fusion, Fishnet, and maybe I'll try this Pertnet, maybe, I don't know, or Object Networks, all these other things, or maybe Unity, right? I would do Unity for sure, but maybe you want to do one of these other guys. But I'll use NGO, Unity, NGO, Fishnet, and Fusion for sure. Or I would do, yeah, one of those 3 I would test out. And then you know what you want to use based on when you work 40 hours on each. Or let's say you have a team of you have a team, because we had a team of 2 developers. Do a run, so who can get there first. You use Fusion, you use NGO, Unity Network for Game Objects, and you use something else, whatever you want, and then have them test things out and see what the best prototype is at the end of the week. And then that will tell you a little bit about, you'll know then after going into it. And this is all based if you know how to read the documentation, right? Because this will be the fastest way for you to get to where you know which candidate you'll end up with based on just your thought process. Because a lot of it's just a tool, and it's like, what tool do you like better? That's all. But I've seen, like I told you with Monkey Doodoo, I was able to publish 2 games using Fusion, and it takes me, I can say that full time, 35 to 40 hours a week, it takes me 6 to 7 months to create a prototype by myself. And I know that, and I can probably make it in less now because I kind of know the shortcuts and just kind of how to get there faster. And so being able to cut scope, I can do it faster now and iterate on prototype, maybe 3 or 4 months full time. Those are things that I've learned because I now know in Fusion, right? If I start in Quantum or anything else, I know nothing. And even though I understand the concepts, there's a learning curve. And that's why I said try to spend 1 week on each one or 40 hours on each, because it's super viable. Now, the other alternatives, like I've had buddies that have done VR and have done Unity, NGO, and we took some courses on Unity multiplayer to learn from somebody, and guess what? They still haven't published a game. At the same time, I've been already published another game. So yes, there's different limitations on time and whatnot, but like I have friends that have 10 or 14 unfinished games that are just sitting there, and all they need is just like 10 hours of work each or 20 or whatever, but like the scope keeps going out. And that's why I'm telling you, like, the advice I'm giving you will save you time. I've seen friends just waste time, and I keep telling them to cut scope, and they just do their own thing. And yeah, when they do their own, I don't know how to tell you, like I say, if you do this, you will finish faster. Oh no, but this is very important. Okay, peace out. Like, good luck, dude. But like, I don't know what else to tell you. Like, my question to you is, do you want to finish games? If so, like, subscribe, like, listen to the advice I'm giving you, and you'll finish games. Because I'm telling you, like, this is advice I would give myself 4 or 5 years ago, or even 7, to do more games on the side faster, and what it means to fail faster. Because we say a lot of things, but we don't do them, and we think that we are immune or different, and that it doesn't apply to us, but it does. Okay, and then you look at it, and then you're like unhappy with your life. You're busy doing things that, I don't know, don't further out your future. That's up to you, right? Like, I enjoy doing what I do, and I'm here because of a lot of little decisions that change the course of my outcome. And these are the things that I'm sharing. It's those decisions. Okay, so are you good with documentations? I am not. Okay, so I'm going to give you the path to figure that out. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is look at content out there, YouTube, and templates. One of the reasons why I'm doing these videos is because when I was working on Monkey Doodoo, I was looking at Fusion documentation. I was bad at it. I looked at YouTube. There's nothing. 3-4 years ago, there was barely any. Fusion was new, and Fusion's still pretty new, but like Fusion documentation is hard to understand. Like, and so they've done better now. They have more YouTube, but even the YouTube sometimes they're like, dude, can you speak English? Like, why are you just reading documentation, right? And so I think a lot of the times the YouTube out there is not meant for regular people that don't know how to read documentation. And then templates, the Fusion has a lot better templates. So let me show you what I did. And so at this point, you're going to look at Pertnet, Fishnet, Mirror, Unity, Asset Store, figure things out. I'm going to show you, I can't speak for the others. We used Fishnet for headless servers again, but let me show you what I did for Cactus Jam, right? Because after I did Monkey Doo, then Cactus Jam, I was, okay, how are we going to do this? I need to really nail down this project and figure things out. And so some of the things that we wanted to figure out is, well, the first one that I always use for Fusion is the share mode for VR, because I do VR games, and to try to understand how they did the over the network stuff. And honestly, their grabbing mechanics we don't use because it's too much, I think, to sync if it's grabbing or not. There's a lot of things, but it's nice. I think it is a way. There's multiple ways to do the same thing. Anyway, so that's this one. I think I have a grabbable network video on how I handle VR grabbing, because grabbing is one of the harder parts in VR, and the networking that. The other thing that we used is the social hub. The social hub is really good for understanding how to go into dungeons, how to like see how there's two people going in, and okay, who's in a queue to say, okay, we're gonna go together. This is a good one for people that want to, okay, let's transition together to the next scene, and then we have someone starts. This is a host scenario, but I use it to jump from scene to scene and do seamless scene transitions. And so this helped me do that specifically, even though there's other things. I would grab each template and then I would go in there and try to understand how it works. And it was tough for me because, again, like I told you, I don't understand documentation. So I had to download the component and understand what all these things did. And again, like I had to dig into the, okay, why is this here, and try to understand these topics, the connection container, and just this in general. So this I had to really understand. And you got to understand, 2 years later now I'm at the point where I think I understand some of it, because again, I was moving from task to task for my company. So it's like, oh, you need to do this, I need to do this. And so I would move away from doing the network stuff and doing this other thing, and then going back and forth. There's a lot of moving pieces. So I wasn't always working on this one aspect. But I have tutorials. That's why I put all the tutorials out there on Fusion, is because I learned a lot that wasn't written, and a lot that had to do with publishing a game that's not, and that stuff is not out there and it's not commonly available. I've seen even like tutorials on multiplayer games that have like on VR, but because it's all based on just documentation, there's the other half of actually publishing. There's things that are not spoken, but once you publish, you understand that you need, like voice chat. Like Roblox is doing a lawsuit now because moderation. Like this is things that we have to do in VR all the time, moderation, and make sure you have voice chat moderation tools, and that you are, Meta has gatekeeping things to make sure that older kids are being verified and stuff like that. And so these things are features that you have to be aware that sometimes people are not aware of, or like in-app purchases, gifting, and things that happen that are not talked about often. Okay, so Fusion, and then the last thing that I did to learn for Cactus Jam is these game samples, the Asteroid Simple. So the Asteroid Simple is a really good way to learn the mechanics of the game. Like it's not the most optimal, but it has a start and a finish, right? And so that helps you understand how you can do timing, keep track of lives, players, scores, yada yada. And so it's really good for that. So there's a lot of templates in Fusion that I would grab and extract the one thing that I liked, that try to put it in our game. And so there's a lot of downloading projects, looking at it, diving into it. It takes time, and you have to be patient, but you have that. Now, if you wanted like more hand holding, that's why I have in-game devs, the community where I help you with your decisions. Then if you need help understanding things, I can even give you an extra level of helping. So that's why I set that up, because I realized that I looked around, I paid for courses on game dev stuff, and most of the time people didn't either finish or kind of never delivered on what they said they were going to deliver. And so some didn't deliver on what they said they were going to deliver, or didn't finish. And I can say this with confidence, that not many people out there doing tutorials understand the concepts of publishing a game and what they're teaching, because there's so much more with multiplayer games that happen when you publish. And that is the thing that I was looking for, I was paying for, and I wasn't getting. And that's why I started doing these YouTube videos. That's why I started Endgame Devs, because there's a lot of information that's not out there, and even single players, but even more so in multiplayer games, and even more so in VR. And people go in and it's like, oh, I didn't know this. Or, you can make a multiplayer game, launch it, and not do anything in there and ignore everything, like voice chat and other things, in-app purchases, and have everything be broken. But if you really want to maximize your games and actually be successful, there's a lot of little things that are not said that you learn as you go. And most of the times when developers launch live service games, they don't have time to tell other people. And so I want to take the time now when I'm not busy to share this information. So my advice is focus on peer-to-peer, right? Shared mode, and use a template. Follow a tutorial and figure out how far you can get in 10 hours. So if you're doing a mobile game, I'll download a template again because you did your research. You looked at YouTube. You look at templates. If the solution has a template, you get it and you test it out. Even you gotta understand that this is like investing $100 on a Unity asset template is worth it. Like if it teaches you stuff. Even though there are assets that are not the best on the Unity asset store, I can tell you right now, for example, for meta avatars are not a thing I would do. Do not use meta avatars for VR. Meta doesn't even bother updating those. They're all broken. Meta is focused on Meta Horizon and mostly mobile, less than VR. And so I would not focus too much on that. Because there are some templates on Unity Asset Store that mention meta avatars. Don't bother anymore. Don't do meta avatars. That will save you money on those. There's a lot of FPS shooters for Unity, maybe templates. There's the NGO Unity template. The problem, so for example, I'll give you another problem with the Unity template. The Unity template, for example, the UI is very hard-coded to certain dependencies. And so it's not modular. It's not meant to like make your own game from it. I can guarantee you with 90% assurance that you will not make a publishable game from that without stripping out heavily. Like you'd have to delete the UI and recreate it yourself, which is bummer because UI is the thing that I hate doing the most. I wish there's a standardized UI that you could just like drag and drop and not deal with UI. But there's a lot of things, even like authentication. I was trying to swap in for meta authentication and it was a mess to try to figure out why it was doing it. For example, another thing with multiplayer games, you think a lot of players want to change their display name. And so for example, for meta, I like to just grab their meta user ID and let meta filter the names. Okay, so if meta approves the name, I approve of the name. And so what I do is I display whatever meta has for the username and done. Yes, players will complain they want to change their names, but the moment you allow people to change their name, you'll have to figure out how to monitor that or filter. And so that will cost you tons of money and resources to do that because it's a never-ending game. They're going to do spaces, underscores. They're going to get around it one way or another. And so I prefer to just not fight those battles. I don't have, especially as an indie developer, you don't have the resources. I would wait and just let it go. The other thing you could do is, okay, you want to change your name. We charge you a certain in-game currency to change your name every time you want to change your name. So that way, if they do want to fight that battle, they're at least paying some in-game currency, and what that is up to you. And if the things keep going up and it gets more costly for you to monitor that, then you can up the price of what it takes to change your name. So that way you can do that. So those are advices that I have. It's just there's always something you didn't know. Because I've talked to it. If you go to sale, you can change your game. And I talked to the owner, Garrett, and they did allow the name, and they're like, yeah, it's a nightmare now. I don't know what they do for filtering their name, but it's just not a winning battle. And those are things that I'm talking to you about because if I knew back then, these are things like voice chat. Meta has Oculus Party set up that you can go into games with Party, so you can keep voice chat on even if you're not in the same room. That has its own voice app, and in Android can only have one mic permission at a time. So only one app can have the mic permission or the authority to use the mic. And if Oculus Party has that and you go into your game and you require that authentication, you don't check, your game might crash or your game might just not work. And so in order to fix that, you have to, every time your game is going from pause to unpause, you have to check, like, do we still have mic permission? And if we do, allow the player to mute, unmute, whatever, and do those things. But usually, and you can even toggle that within the Oculus Party menu when you hit pause. So you have to check when you pause, when you lose focus, you always have to check to see. And so that was a headache. But that's something that we didn't know, and we lost a lot of players because of that one thing, because we weren't sure why the heck it was happening. Why is the game crashing and all these features? It was a nightmare. And so there's a lot to learn about multiplayer. That's why I say, do not do competitive, do not do physics, just focus on something simple. Figure out a template, figure out how to publish it to your game, and then learn how to tweak it maybe. Try to understand what's going on. Try to switch the character or increase the speed here or there, and then try to recreate your version and do little steps to try to figure it out. But at the beginning, and the hard part is that once you dive into it and the more resources you put into learning that network solution, is that now you don't want to do that for somebody else. Like, I have a hard time choosing any other solution, even though I want so bad for Unity. It would be the ideal scenarios for Unity to have their solution in-house. Because when we had Fusion and we wanted to change to dedicated server, we looked at Unity, but Unity NGO was not there yet. And we tried to use Unity's hosting service, but we had problems with them. Like, they would not, like, even their IT guys or their tech support wasn't very supportive, and so we had a bad experience with them too. So we didn't use them. But ideally, it's less of a hassle if you just have everything in Unity. Unity NGO, you have Unity hosted servers, and even though you have to pay for all those services separately, they're all in the same editor. We had such a nightmare trying to host and do all these matchmaking stuff, and we had so many different parts of the code in different places hosted and all, and that's a nightmare to deal with. So yeah, so really cost efficient to have everything in the editor. Ideally, I would love for Unity NGO to be a thing, to have all the features that Fusion has, like really host migration, prediction. I think it does have prediction, but just have better templates, have more templates so that there's other options to learn from, to look at. To have that workflow really explained so that you can actually publish to different devices, because there are certain features that are not in there that I wish I could just swap in and out, but it would take so much more to scrap out the UI and the code and then redo your own version of it, and that is a hassle in itself. But if you need help, I have Endgame Devs, so you have no excuse. Like, I'm here for you. If you have questions, leave in the comments below. The main thing is look at templates, look at YouTube tutorials, see what's out there, read documentation if you can, and try out the samples. Spend some time figuring out what kind of game do you want to make first, and then based on that, what's out there that can help you get there faster. And that's what you want to learn. And you got to stick with the same. If you're doing mobile games, don't just jump from mobile to PC and from PC to VR and whatnot. Choose the platform of your choice and figure out what's best for that platform for you at the time. And I want to mention one last thing. Let's say you do have a specific game you're thinking about and you're not sure yet. There is a way for you to save time. You could keep making your game in single player game, knowing that you're gonna make it a multiplayer game. In September, every Monday I'm gonna have a video. I'm gonna be focusing on enemy AI, but it's gonna be networked. But I'm gonna show you step by step how I go about through the process so that you know how to cut it out. Because the only problem is that in order to do that, you have to know networked, right? So I know Fusion, and I know what I need to do eventually to make it networked. So it's really hard to go back and do it in reverse. But I'm going to show you so that you understand what things to watch out for when you are making a single player game that eventually will be multiplayer. Because I think you can do that. You just have to be aware of what things, again, it's kind of like a scope creep. Is certain things you're not going to touch because you know you're going to handle multiplayer. So scene transitions, you're not going to go crazy and determine how you're going to do scene transitions. You just do a scene you don't even do fade in, fade out because you don't care right now. So certain aspects that depend on your network solution, you will not bother because they're going to be refactored and you're going to be focusing on mechanics. It might help you make your code more solid, which is single responsibility, object oriented, and different things that will help your code be better. And so in September, I'm going to focus on showing you that step by step so that you kind of get behind the scenes on how I go about multiplayer games. I also live stream every Saturday where I'm working on my game, and so you can see that. But these videos in September are going to be focused on very detailed information, so that way you could see that, because I don't know how else to show you or help you understand. So I'm going to try that approach and see if it helps you. So please, if you like to be on top of those videos and see, that will save you some time because you can do single player game mechanics and you can, while you're doing that, you can keep an eye on the network solutions you have as your top 3 and see how they evolve over the course of the time. And you'll see that they'll publish, a new update, or this happened to this one, and you can keep an eye. And if you waited a year and you spent that year building out your mechanics for your multiplayer game, but they're in single player mode, that is a win in some scenarios. I would not wait a year, but even if you waited a year, the mechanics, the updates that happen to network solutions it would be fantastic because they are always improving. A year is a lot of improvement, and you'll see if a network solution is either gone downhill or uphill based on what they've done over the last year. And Fusion keeps going up and getting better, and Quantum and other things. And so does Unity. So maybe in a year, Unity will have all the features that Fusion has now, right? In the future, maybe. So those are things to watch out for. Those are another option. Is you don't have to jump into multiplayer right now. It's up to you, your needs, your wants, and what are you looking for in the future, your career goals. Are you trying to get a job in the industry, or your boss needs a working solution now? Those are things to consider. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. Or again, if you want to come and receive some one-on-one help, come to Endgame Devs, and we'll see you.